Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with allthingsbbq.com, and this is pulled pork barbecue sushi rolls. Yes, today we are bringing together two foods that I love, barbecue and sushi. Now, to be honest, sushi is usually my escape from barbecue, so bringing these two together, I'm not sure if it's gonna be a beautiful union or a terrible idea, but we're gonna do it anyway. Now, this is a great utilization for leftover barbecue meats like pulled pork or brisket or even some smoked chicken. Today we're doing pulled pork, and since we're here, we're gonna walk through that entire process. But this is a really cool little sort of finger food, party food. I know we can't really have parties right now, but you still gotta celebrate a little bit. But today we're gonna be smoking on the Yoder Smoker's loaded Wichita offset smoker. I've got a chimney of charcoal ready to go in the firebox. We're gonna get this thing lit up. So just gonna kind of arrange this charcoal toward the back of the firebox. That's where we're gonna contain our fire. We'll run a small hot fire in the back. That way we can really control the temperature. We're gonna put one log up front just to warm up. That way when we roll it over, it'll combust immediately. But for now, we're just gonna let these get going and start to bring the temperature of the grill up. So let's go ahead and get our pork butt trimmed up and seasoned, ready to go on the smoker. So what we're looking at here is the Boston butt, bone-in Boston butt portion of the pork shoulder. Here's the fat cap, there's that false cap underneath it. If you want, you can trim that all the way off. We're gonna keep it simple today and just leave it be. I'm gonna flip this over and look for anything on the surface that shouldn't be there, like a little bit of extra cartilage right there. Any other hard stuff that catches my attention. Looks like the butcher nicked our money muscle there, which is unfortunate, but it'll be fine. And then really what we need to do when we're trimming this pork butt is to get into this crevice here and trim out all of this stringy tissue. Just kind of ends up stringy in the end and chewy and not something you really want to chew on. So we're gonna slide our knife right underneath it and right on top of the muscle, and just get rid of any of the stringy stuff and the membranes on top. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side here. Not bad. Now you could go as crazy on this as you like, but at some point you gotta call it good. That's what we're gonna do now. Now when I'm leaving the fat cap on, I might still just trim a little bit of the excess off, because we don't need a ton of fat on here. There's plenty of intramuscular fat. Again, this is optional as well. One thing I do like to do when I'm leaving it on is I'll just score the surface. Kind of helps us to get some rub down into these crevices. Speaking of the rub, let's go ahead and move on to seasoning now. So it's always a good idea to use a little binder. Today we're gonna be using sriracha for our binder. So we're just gonna rub this all over the surface, into those little crevices as well. This is gonna help the rub stick to the meat, as well as offering just a little bit of flavor. And we're gonna be working with two rubs today. You can choose your favorite barbecue rubs. I've got the honey bacon barbecue from Meat Church. We're gonna go on first. It's a nice fine layer, good sweetness to it. Goes great on pork. I'd go just a little bit heavier if this was the only rub I'm using, but since we're gonna double up on rubs today, kind of a fine layer down first. Big piece of meat, so it can take some seasoning. And then once I've got that initial layer down, we're gonna come in with something a little bit brighter, a little bit more red. One of my favorite pork and chicken rubs, Plowboy's Yardbird. You're definitely kind of melding two different things today between the sushi and the barbecue. So starting off with the sriracha and then some of our favorite barbecue rubs is a great way to go. And as you'll see later, we'll even get into some teriyaki flavors. All right, so that looks good. As soon as all of this rub looks attached and wet on the surface, it's ready to go onto the smoker. All right, so we're gonna go dead center on the smoker here. Bone side to the fire pit. We've got our fireboard set up so we can kind of keep an idea of what the temperature is going on inside. We're gonna probably go around 250 for the majority of this smoke. We'll also go ahead and get a meat probe kind of down here in the thickest part so we can monitor the internal temperature. Well, the pork butt's been on for about 5 hours now. It's got a great bark on the outside. At this point, we're gonna wrap it up with a little bit of liquid inside, and then we're gonna finish it wrapped so it just shreds and falls apart. Look at that, looking really nice. Our internal temperature, we're at about 165 right now, 169 exactly. So that's great. A great little boost on it. We're getting close. We're gonna take this up to about 205, so that's a good place to be when you wrap. So we're gonna add to the wrap some Smoke on Wheels pork marinade. This is a great liquid, especially for what we're doing today, because it's got apple and pineapple juice, soy sauce, a lot of sweet and salty, a little umami, and that's perfect for this sushi that we're gonna do today. So about a quarter to a third cup. We're gonna wrap this up nice and tight, being careful not to puncture the foil, especially on that blade bone down here. And back onto the pit. Throw a probe back in here. Make sure we're right kind of in that deepest part of the boneless half. Next, we're gonna prepare the sushi rice so it can be cooled down when we're ready to assemble our rolls. What we have here is a 1.5 cups of short grain sushi rice that I've just rinsed in cool water, strained it off until that water runs clear, rinsing off the extra starch. So we're gonna place this in a pot with 2 cups of water. We'll cover it and bring it up to a simmer over medium-high heat. So as soon as that comes up to a simmer, we're gonna turn the heat down to low. And we're just gonna let that simmer away for the next 15 minutes. Meanwhile, let's put together a little bit of slaw. So this is gonna be an easy one. 2 cups here of slaw mix, just cabbage and carrots. Got a 1/4 cup of sliced green onions. A 1/4 cup of crushed pineapple that's been strained from the juice. And we're gonna hit this with about a tablespoon of Kim's spicy teriyaki sauce. It's a generous tablespoon. And a tablespoon of Japanese Kewpie mayo. I just get hands in there, mix it all together. And that we can throw in the fridge until we're ready for our rolls. Next, we're gonna mix up a sauce to go over the top of our rolls, starting with 2 parts of the Kewpie mayo, and we'll mix in 1 part of the Kim's spicy teriyaki. So we're just gonna mix that up really well and then transfer it to a squeeze bottle. So we'll throw the slaw and the sauce into the fridge and check in on the sushi rice here in a few minutes. All right, it's been 15 minutes, so we're gonna turn the power off completely now, and we're just gonna let that rest for 10 more minutes. All right, so we've let our rice sit now. I'm gonna transfer it over to a bowl. And then we're gonna put together a little bit of dressing that we're gonna work into this rice. So I've got a couple tablespoons of rice vinegar, tablespoon of sugar, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. That we're just going to dissolve into the vinegar and then pour it over the rice. So stir this just until it's warmed up and everything's dissolved. We're gonna pour that dressing over the rice. This is essentially going to season the rice, but at the same time, that vinegar, as we kind of work it in here, starts to work its way around each little piece of rice. So we'll do this while it's warm, and then we'll let it cool down. All right, so I'm just gonna spread this out to kind of cool evenly, and we'll set it aside. Well, our pork butt's been on for about 8 hours now, and the internal has come up to 205, so we're about ready to pull this thing off. Let's take a look. Oh man, that looks good. Look at that bone just popping out. Just about, yeah, that's gonna pop right out of there. Just probing on this, you can feel that there's not much resistance, and that internal temperature just about at that 205 mark. So let's pull that off. Now the pork butt's still pretty hot, but we're gonna go ahead and shred it. Luckily with pulled pork, when you're just gonna shred it up anyway, it's just gonna soak up all the juices in here, so it's not necessary to rest it for a long time. As you can see, that blade bone just slips right out of there. That's a good indicator that you're at the pulled pork stage. And then I just glove up and get in there with my hands. And it does not take much to shred that apart. And we're just gonna toss this through the juices until all of those juices, and you can see a lot of them in the bottom of this foil, they're gonna soak right into the meat. Now look at that, juice is gone, which is why we're gonna have some super juicy pulled pork. So I'm just gonna spread this out and let it cool down a bit before we start building our rolls. Now I mentioned earlier that this is a really great utilization of leftover barbecue meat. So if that's what I was doing, just assume I didn't cook this pork butt today, here's how I would prepare it for the sushi roll. We're gonna take a handful of that leftover pork or whatever meat it might be, and I'm just gonna hit it with a little bit more of this spicy teriyaki sauce. If you like a little extra kick to it, maybe a little sriracha, and then I'm just gonna take my knife and I'm just gonna mince it up. And this will really help when slicing the rolls, not to tear anything. And mix that and get the sauce coated on all pieces of the pork. All right, we've got all the components, now let's bring it all together. So we've got our seaweed. I'm gonna divide this in half for our rolls here. And we'll start one at a time. So we're gonna take some of that rice, we'll just place it right there in the center, and then we wanna press it out to the edges of the seaweed. We'll try and keep this in a uniform level. Might just overlap the edges just a little bit. If your rice is a little sticky, you can use some water on your fingers to keep it from sticking to your hands. All right, so that's about where we want it. So we're gonna come over this with a piece of plastic wrap and flip that over. Now, for the sake of this roll, we're gonna go just pulled pork on the inside. You could add your slaw in here if you want, but I found that you get more of that barbecue pulled pork flavor if you just put the meat on the inside and save the slaw for the top. And we're just gonna roll that right around until the rice meets up. If you've got a sushi mat, that'll make this a little bit easier. Just kind of tighten that. Crimp it down. And then if you want, what you can do is just roll that up and stick it in the fridge and let it firm up just a little bit before you cut it. All right, so let's do one more now where we're gonna have the seaweed on the outside. So essentially going to be the same process, starting at the beginning. Leave just a little bit of a gap here. Bring our rice out to the edges. Gently use the fingertips to kind of spread this out evenly rather than mashing it all together. Now instead of flipping it this time, we can go with our fillings right on top of the rice. And as far as the fillings go, that's totally up to you. You want to add some extra stuff in here, go for it. Some avocado would be great. Some other veggies. Maybe you just want to hit it with a little sriracha. I'm gonna put this one on plastic as well. The plastic's kind of a crutch, but it's a crutch that I need. I'm certainly no expert at this. But we're essentially gonna do the same thing. Rolling over. Until we meet the other side. Check and see that we met up. We got a little short, overstuffed it by just a little bit. That's all right. Slide that down and kind of pack up the sides. All right, we could do as many of these as we like, but now that we've done them a couple different ways, let's go ahead and slice these up. I'm just gonna square off the end here. And we will go ahead and top these off with some slaw and some sauce, but we'll wait until after we've got them cut, just kind of as a presentation. So let's go right down the middle and then into thirds. So 6 pieces out of each roll. All right, now, same thing. Take the ends off to square it up. And then slice this once again into 6. If you need to dip your knife or clean it in between slices, that can help. That rice is pretty sticky. There you go. All right, so now let's come on top of here with that Asian slaw that we made earlier. And then we're going to finish this off with that sauce we mixed up earlier. Well, let's give it a try. That's some fun fusion. I mean, the nori always sets it off as I'm eating sushi. But then you get to the smoky pulled pork, and it's a little bit confusing, but it's a lot of fun. This is probably just a great little trick to have in your back pocket when you need a fun dish for a fun event. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out allthingsbbq.com for all the products featured in today's video. If you enjoyed the recipe, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments or there's anything you'd like to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below. And let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to allthingsbbq.com/thesauce. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.